Good evening, everyone. What an honor to be here this evening. I was really excited when Jen asked me to participate. So what my goal is this evening, and I want this to be as informal as we can make it. So feel free to ask questions, speak out. You can put stuff in chat. I'll be monitoring that. But what my goal is to provide some foundational information, which hopefully will build on stuff that you guys have already done over the last 6 weeks and even before this, that will allow you to create some space for some nourishment in our lives. So I'm going to say all of us. And you know, the title of my presentation was spirituality or purpose focused. I think the purpose for anything that we do comes from inside of us. And sometimes we have to get quiet and have that space to be able to appreciate our understanding of what's bubbling up for us or what's our awareness. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So before we get started, does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, so can everybody see the first slide? All right, great, thank you. Okay, so what I'd like to do first is I'd like to open up with a small, a short exercise to kind of get us grounded and kind of just focused on internally what's happening inside. So I'm going to ask you to just find a comfortable posture. Most of us are probably seated, or if we're lying down, that's fine too. And if you'd like, if you're sitting, maybe have both feet on the floor. And you can allow your eyes to close gently if that feels okay, or just lower your gaze. And now bring your attention to the areas of contact that your feet are having with the floor, feeling your feet. Noticing the solid nature of the ground under your feet. If you have shoes on, maybe feeling where your shoes are in contact with your feet, or maybe if you have socks on, feeling your socks on your feet. And now moving up to your thighs and buttocks and noticing where they have contact with your chair or your couch or your cushion. And just allowing the ground and your chair to hold and support your body without needing to do anything. Now moving your attention to your back. And where does your back touch the back of your chair? Can you feel the difference between where there's contact and where there is none? Now moving your attention to your hands and just feeling into your hands. Maybe noticing the position of your hands. Maybe noticing what they're touching. Are they touching each other, your thighs, maybe the arms of your chair or the table? And now opening your awareness, feeling your entire body sitting here in this moment in your chair. And bring your attention to your breath. And if you like, you can make the next couple of breaths a little bit deeper so you can really feel your breath. Notice the sensations in your body as you're breathing. Perhaps at the nostrils where the air comes in, or maybe the back of your throat, perhaps in your chest, or maybe your belly. And using that place as an anchor for your attention. This is where you come back to over and over whenever your mind wanders off. And now allowing the breath to just breathe itself. No need to make it any other way than it wants to be. And when you're ready, if your eyes are closed, just allow them to open slowly and reacclimate yourself from your internal environment back to your external environment. And if your eyes are gazed downwards, just slowly allow them to come back to center. Okay. All right, so we can't start a program about wellness without actually describing in what wellness is. And I ask my students this all the time because it's a word we typically use and are hearing more and more. There was a commercial on TV the other day from Rite Aid, your wellness pharmacy. And I thought, what are they doing different than they did before, which was about a month ago before I heard this commercial. And honestly, nothing's different. But we hear the word wellness a lot. So I like to talk about what I think wellness is, what it means to me. And honestly, the first time this question was posed to me over a decade ago was, what is wellness? And I said, it means I'm not sick. And actually, wellness is really not simply the absence of illness. It's a very broad concept that's holistic and multidimensional. That means there's many, many things to incorporate into our wellness. And it's not just about not being sick. It's about holistic. It's a whole, looking at the body and everything we engage with as a whole. And I'll talk about that in a minute. When we talk about the multidimensional nature, the dimensions are interconnected with one dimension building on another. Now, some of you may be familiar with this. This is considered what we call the 8 domains of wellness. And I'm not going to spend lots of time on this. You can look in the literature, or maybe you've had some other speakers talk about this. So this concept of wellness was started back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s. And there were 6 domains at that time. Since then, it kind of was really popular in the 70s and 80s, went underground in the 90s, and then has resurrected again. And we've come back with 8 domains. So when we look at the domains, they're considered emotional, spiritual, intellectual, physical, environmental, financial, occupational, and social. And as I mentioned, these dimensions are interconnected with one dimension building on the other. Now, with this concept of the wellness model, there's also the biopsychosocial model. And I utilize this all the time in my practice with clients teaching and also with my own personal care. And it's a concept that we look at with understanding health. So we have the biopsychosocial model to include biology, psychology, and our social context. So if we look at what makes up our biology, and this is typically where we look at people focus on their health from the biological side. So that's our immune function, our stress reactivity, our medication, our physical illness, our disabilities. But in reality, it's really, again, a holistic model where we need to bring in other aspects, which include our psychology circle. And you can see that these are all connected, where we have our attitudes and beliefs, our behaviors, our emotions, our coping skills, past trauma. And then we have our social context. This is where we bring in our supports, our cultural traditions, our socioeconomic status, our education. So again, I like to think that when we talk about wellness, again, the 2 models work very closely together. And what I want to talk about tonight is how we can utilize all these aspects in our way to create nourishment for ourselves and our nervous system. So I know you've had a lecture on stress, but what I want to bring into you may have talked about the resilience piece. So I have this picture of the yin yang, right? And the yin yang is about balance. So one side is stress and the other side is resilience. So when we look at stress, stress is in our lives. It is here to stay. It's not going to go away. So how do we manage that? And that typically comes from the other side of the yin yang, which is resilience. And resilience is our ability to manage stress and be able to support ourselves during those times of stress. So what I want to introduce tonight are ways that allow us to build resilience, that allow us to create nourishment for our bodies and specifically our nervous system. So when I speak about this, I'm going to use the word space and nourishment. So let me kind of talk briefly about when I say the nervous system. So we know that stress can affect many aspects of our body holistically. Resilience can support that stress. One of the areas that takes a hit the majority of the time with this is our nervous system. And our nervous system, I like to break it down very simplistically into our sympathetic, which is our activated nervous system, and our parasympathetic, which is our, I call it rest and digest. We toggle between the two. Normally, that's what we should do, is toggle between the two. So the sympathetic activation is necessary. It's important for ways when we're managing stress at a level that we can bring it back down and then go back into our parasympathetic. What we find in our culture nowadays is that we don't have the ability to be able to toggle back and forth nicely. We have to give our nervous system a break. We have to create space to allow that parasympathetic side, that rest and digest side, to allow ourselves to nourish our nervous system, AKA our holistic body. So what I want to speak on tonight is our ability to do that, which by doing that, when we go into rest and digest side of our nervous system, it allows us to think more clearly with different parts of our brain that allows us to have some awareness that we may not have if we're always in that high stress environment. So how do we create space in our lives? So space, think of the word, it's a basic need. I like to think of the word space as expansive, freedom, empty, pure presence of energy, nourishment. Think about space being inside our bodies and also outside of our bodies. And it's really the opposite of stress. So when I talk to clients and patients and friends of mine, when we talk about cultivating space in our lives, I like to ask people to say, how do you experience space in your life? And when I first started this concept with myself, I thought, I don't have any. I don't have any space, literally don't have any space between family, professional, personal. I thought, when do I have space? Maybe driving home after work in traffic, that's really not a whole lot of space. So one of the things we talk about is, how do you experience space in your life? So I want you to think just for a moment, how do you experience space in your life? And if anybody wants to add that to the chat or wants to just speak out, feel free to share if you like, or if you're inclined, and if not, we can talk about it after. How about space in our days? Oh, we do have somebody in chat. Let me ask. When I'm sleeping, daily devotionals. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Beautiful times to share and to create space. Space in your day, morning and evening especially. When we look at how important this is, again, from a holistic perspective, when we get up in the morning, our levels of cortisol are very high. So we want them to come down naturally. So having that time to just acclimate and get our day started. Similarly in the evening, coming down from the day is just as important as being kind to ourselves and getting our day started. Sometimes they use an app for meditation. They have spectacular apps out there now. Sue, do you want to share what kind of apps you're using?
Sure. I have used an app. I'm going to forget what one of them is. I've used a number of them. I did sign on to Aura, AURA. It is a paid app. But there is another one that someone had recommended to me called Smiling Mind. And that's a free app.
Oh, I like
It
that.
is it is an Australian app, so if you have trouble with accents, that you might have trouble understanding some of the things. But on that one, you can choose whether you want a male voice or a female voice, and it also gives you a little questionnaire before each little meditation to kind of see where you are, and then it recommends particular meditations based on where you are in your presence or stress level.
That sounds fabulous. I really like that, especially the little the precursor to it to kind of decide what kind of meditation they would like you to, you can pick for that. Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that. I haven't heard of those two. I'm going to check those out. Thank
Yeah,
you.
there's another one that I've used for a long time called Relax Melodies. And at first, it just started as nature sounds or maybe, singing bowls or just white noise. But they have since added meditations to it. And then you can also build, like, if you want background noise, a lot of times I add like a rain noise to the background of the meditation or visualization.
Ooh, that sounds really cool. I like that. Thank you. I'm going to try those out. Thanks, Sue.
Sure.
Thanks for sharing. So Janet mentioned space in my home decluttering. I got to tell you, big thing, right? Decluttering and creating space. Yes. Listening to music, walking outdoors. There's a part of our brain that if we don't listen to music, it actually goes to sleep. So there's been a lot of research about allowing that part of our brain to stay awake. And music is the way we activate that. Walking outdoors, we're going to talk about being in nature. Perfect. What is the name of the Australian one? I think it was Smiling Mind. Is that correct, Sue? Yeah, we got it. Jen put it in there. Okay, good. All right. Wonderful. Some of the additional things with space without screens. And again, morning and evening especially. I talk to so many people, the first thing we do when our feet hit the ground is we pick up our phone. Or if we're early morning workers, we're coming down, especially those of us who have gotten used to working out of the house first thing in the morning, first thing we do is check our emails, or in the evening. So again, a way to set up space in our home. So we had that comment about creating space in our home with decluttering. So the second word I had put up there with space was creating space to allow us to nourish. So nourishment is truly good for us. Now, this may be a word that we don't think about using when we're talking about ourselves. We eat food for nourishment, but there's other ways, again, a holistic practice of, I think of it as nourishing our nervous system. It counters our depletion, it's replenishing, it's grounding. The first little exercise we did when we signed on together was, we call that a grounding exercise, kind of just allowing ourselves to be in the space for the next amount of time. And we'll do a couple more exercises before we sign off together tonight, a little couple activities. But grounding is a great way to just get us focused, kind of get us in a space. Nourishment is resilience, and it gives us strength and balance. So again, I'm going to ask you to think about, what is your relationship with nourishment? When we think about that, what might we be avoiding, or how might we be avoiding nourishment? And where might we have an aversion to it? So if anybody wants to comment on that, any thoughts you have, or just jot down some notes, maybe we can talk about later, or just allow yourself to think about that. keeping busy. So Claudia, was that an answer to the nourishment, my relationship? So what is that? What is keeping busy? What question?
It's a way of avoiding nourishment, to
Yes.
not think about going on.
Yes.
I do that pretty much all the time,
Yes.
to my detriment.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes. And Jen added, feel selfish for taking time for me, right? Yes. Now, I will tell you when we start talking in a couple of slides, we're going to talk about something called the minimum daily requirement that kind of addresses some of this. And it can be 3 minutes a day, maybe our world to step into our nourishment. Or it could be still doing the responsibilities we have, just kind of bringing in a few other things, as you'll see when we take a shower or have our cup of tea or coffee in the morning. So we'll talk about that. Anybody else want to add anything about nourishment? I know when I was first introduced to the concept, I'll just share myself. It was like, what? I love the word, but I was like, okay, space and nourishment, two things so it really allowed me to kind of sit and be like, why am I avoiding this? Why do I have this, I like the word, but I don't really like the concept of it. So again, it was just being able to find the ability to do it and give myself permission. Okay, next slide. So let's talk about some ways to provide nourishment. And some of us may already have a great way to do this. And some of the other speakers have probably already introduced some things. Let's think of some other ways too that we can build with that. So this is one that could be kind of easy maybe to do in the morning. Honey lemon water. It's hydrating, it's warm, it supports balanced digestion, it encourages healthy elimination, and we do it first thing in the morning. So it's 6 to 8 ounces of warm water, a little bit of honey, a little bit of lemon juice, a pinch of salt, and then drink it up. So again, it's a way to incorporate something that maybe if we're feeling very busy and don't have a lot of time, it's a way to start to add that nourishment for ourselves. Self-massage. So as a yoga practitioner, the sister science of yoga is Ayurvedic medicine. So I've studied some Ayurvedic medicine, and one of the foundational cores of Ayurvedic medicine is self-massage with oil. It's the ability to allow us to move and help circulate our toxins out of our body, and it feels good. Typically, self-massage is one of the most important and profound practices of Ayurveda. It's very good for grounding and stabilizing the nervous system and deeply nourishing. So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. Typically, the carrier oil that's used most commonly for self-massage is sesame oil, and you can also use almond or olive oil. So what the Ayurvedic text state is, after bathing, patting yourself dry so that your skin's still a little damp, and then using warm sesame oil, applying it to your body, starting at the tops of your feet, making your way up gradually up your body, working with deeply as you can with long strokes on the limbs. So you're working from the base all the way up to the neck. You then let the oil absorb for 5 to 10 minutes before getting dressed. Now, I'll tell you another way that I've practiced this. And this is typically done as we go from the fall to winter season. I think we're still okay to do it. I'm still doing it now when it gets cold. It's a little warm right now. We're kind of hitting that springtime a little sooner than normal in February or March. But so you can use sesame oil on your feet before you go to bed. I was introduced to this practice about 2 years ago during the pandemic when it started. And as we all know, it was very anxiety provoking. And so some of my Ayurvedic practitioners were talking about this practice, and I thought, I'm going to try this. So I went and I got some sesame oil, and I started massaging my feet quickly at night, and then I put my socks on. And I got to tell you, it was phenomenal what it did. It was just relaxing and grounding. So the boys, I have two teenage boys, and they were like, what's mom doing? So they tried it and they enjoyed it. So typically it's done though. So Ayurvedic medicine, there's different practices during different seasons. This is usually done from our fall to winter season. I still think it's a great practice we can do in the winter if you can stand sleeping with socks on as it gets a little warmer. But I really like that. So if the body part doesn't feel comfortable for you, the feet would be amazing. You can still get a lot of benefit. Any questions on that? Okay. One of the other practices that Ayurvedic medicine speaks about is something called dry brushing. And it's a stimulating practice using a natural bristle body brush on the skin. Now, there are body brushes and there are face brushes. So just to make sure that we don't use the body brush on our face, you can use the face brush on your body if that would feel more comfortable. But again, we're starting at the feet and we're brushing in long strokes on the limbs, not too vigorously, and then in circles, typically around the joints. And this helps remove dead skin, it increases circulation of lymph fluid, and it removes stagnation. And then typically the practice after you do your dry brushing is to take a shower or bathe afterwards. Another practice, some of us may, I know when I was a little girl, I remember bathing with Rosewater when I went to my grandma's, and I remembered having such a beautiful smell and such a cooling effect. Rosewater is making a resurgence again. I've seen it out in the market. I've seen it at Whole Foods and some of the other places, but it really has a very calming and cooling effect. And we can spray it on our face or on our arms, wherever, on our chest, on our neck, on our décolleté, I can never say that word, on our upper chest and our clavicles here. And it's very calming. Again, a way to nourish and allow us to have that moment of peace during our day when we may be having a very busy, very stressful environment. Some of us may or may not, I know I saw aromatherapy on your website, so I think you guys are talking about that already, but aromatherapy is amazing. I always, on my desk here, I have two. I have lavender, so this is lavender's very grounding effect. You can use your aromatherapy oils in your sesame oil for your self-massage, or if you want, you can put it on your pulse points or use in a diffuser. So on my desk all the time, I have eucalyptus, which will pick me up if I'm feeling a little tired. And then if I'm feeling a little bit stressed, I have my lavender sitting here and I'll smell it, or sometimes I'll put it on my pulse points or use it on my hands. I think aromatherapy is amazing. And there's a lot of very strong scientific data supporting the use of aromatherapy from a holistic practice. So breathing. So here's our next activity that we're going to do. Specifically diaphragmatic breathing. Now, diaphragmatic breathing, when we engage our diaphragm is a muscle and it looks like kind of like a kidney bean. So we have our lungs are tissue. Our diaphragm is the muscle that allows the lungs to expand to get more air into our bodies. Think of breathing as the gateway into the nervous system. So if we're having an especially really crappy day and we just need a little bit of a timeout, the best way to get into that cycle and break it is just to do a little bit of diaphragmatic breathing. So we're going to practice that right now if anybody wants to practice. So what I'd like you to do once again is go ahead and sit back into your chair. And when you're ready, you can bring your hands to your belly. What oil can we use on our feet in the spring and summer? So you can still do sesame oil. That's not a problem. The difference is putting socks on afterwards. So some people may feel it's too warm, but it also can be very soothing. And actually, I found it to be somewhat cooling. So you can still use the sesame oil. That's the carrier oil that's recommended. So Debbie, thank you for that question. So let's go ahead and we can sit back and we'll put our hands on our belly if we'd like. And what I'd like you to do is when you inhale through your nose, so we're going to inhale and exhale through our nose, if that's comfortable. And with your hands on your belly, when you inhale, just allow your belly to expand with your inhale. And then with your exhale, just allow your belly to release with your exhale. So inhaling, expanding your belly. And then exhaling, releasing gently. We want to make sure we're relaxing our jaw, no clenching of our teeth, relax your shoulders. And I'm just going to talk a little bit as you guys are doing your belly breathing. So what we're doing when we allow the belly to expand with the inhale is we're engaging the diaphragm. When we come out of the womb, we're belly breathers. When we're 3 to 4 years old, that changes. The normal, healthy breathing that we like to engage for our nervous system is our diaphragmatic breath. And then when you're ready, you can release your hands, and if your eyes are closed, allow your eyes to open. Does anybody want to comment on what that felt like or what you noticed, or does anybody practice diaphragmatic breath or any type of breathing or pranayama practices?
I use this type of breathing whenever I'm feeling kind of anxious or stressed.
Okay, Sue, does it help?
It does.
Good, okay. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Claudia, you said it made you yawn. So was that a relaxation yawn?
I don't know. Is there a difference?
I don't know. Sometimes yawning is our way of just kind of relaxing in the body, allowing like the face to release.
Oh, excuse me, just talking about it
Yeah.
makes me yawn.
So Jet, you said yes, you and Beth also. So Sue, to come back to your question, or Beth or anybody who had commented that you're using it, can you maybe talk and give some tips about things that have worked for you different times when you've used it? Are you comfortable sharing anything with the group about that?
I'll talk about it. You mean like when I use it when I'm stressed?
Yeah. What like when do you notice you're using it? Like, do you think about it? Like, do you have to say, okay, diaphragmatic breathing, or does it automatically happen?
I don't say diaphragmatic breathing, but I will make sure that I guess I call it a belly breath.
Okay.
So that it's not in the top of my chest, but that
Yeah.
I actually feel my abdomen expanding. And try to breathe in through the nose and feel that expansion in the belly area. I might hold it for a few seconds and then exhale through the mouth.
Yeah.
And I try to do it just a second or two longer, just to make sure I'm expelling everything from my lungs.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Does anybody else want to share about their breathing? Okay, oops, I'm going the wrong way. Oh my Lord, here we go. Okay, so the next um, nourishment practice that we could think about, and maybe some of us again are already doing this, is some gentle stretching. Now, I know some people are already maybe doing yoga, but just even practicing some gentle stretching to support joint health and mobility. Again, we're talking about releasing tension and stagnation and restoring that optimal flow of energy through our entire body. So does anybody have this practice that they're doing? Any yoga practitioners out there or gentle stretching? Okay. Journaling. Again, it's an activity that we can incorporate as things come to us through some of our other nourishing practices. Wow, Karen, that's awesome. You take yoga 5 days a week. That's wonderful. Do you enjoy the practice? I'm assuming you do. Wonderful. Okay. So journaling is, one of the things that we talk about again with journaling is our way to maintain a dialogue with ourselves. Sometimes we have lots going on cognitively, and we can explore it better if we get it out on paper. So was a quote that I saw that Eleanor Roosevelt said, friendship with oneself is all important because without it, one cannot be friends with anyone else in the world. So I know that journaling for me wasn't something that I typically did, and I've really leaned into it a little bit more. And when I journal, it doesn't have to be like lots and lots. It can just be a couple words, whatever makes sense. Let me see here in our chat. So we have Dad that does yoga at least 3 to 4 times a week, and then joint stretching with Cancer Bridges. So that's wonderful. Good. And then we have mandalas. Again, I'm not sure if anybody has done mandalas, but it's a form of art therapy that can reduce anxiety, attention, and overall stress. Again, a lot of the literature coming out around holistic health practices and just kind of allowing us to toggle between that activated nervous system and that rest and digest nervous system. Drawing stimulates creativity as a way to release emotional blockages. Again, I can speak to mandalas. When the kids were little, I had a bunch of mandalas, and in order to bring them down at night, and this worked with boys, I would put them at the table with their little crayons and I would have them draw their mandalas, and it really did go from like 200 miles an hour back down to a normal time before bedtime. So, doodling and things like that, we sometimes typically do, especially those of us who aren't as, on the computer all the time. I mean, I still write notes and take notes. So it's a way to release energy and to create some creative space for us. So lots of adult coloring books out there and a lot with mandalas. No, it does not have to be a mandala. It can be whatever you want it to be. Yeah. And then we touched a little on this, I think. Some people had talked about this. I'm going to move up here. Establishing some screen-free time in the morning and after waking for at least 30 minutes, and then 30 minutes before bed. So I think as we have gone through the pandemic and we've seen more use for screen time, especially with Zoom, I do believe that we're seeing some data starting to come out around, now we're on Zoom tonight, but my hope is that you will have some time to kind of come down from the, being on screen before you go to bed. But this is really, really important. And, there's a lot of, again, science coming out around setting aside longer periods of time on a regular basis from screens.
If I may speak to that for just a second,
Absolutely.
to something that I have noticed in myself, I like to read before I go to sleep to kind of quiet my mind and to calm down. And I was always reading on my Kindle at nighttime and having trouble falling asleep. And I've recently, like within the past couple of months, switched to reading a regular book 30 minutes before I want to fall asleep. And I fall asleep so much better after reading, a physical book.
That's so interesting, Sue. I've wondered about that from Kindle readers, how that is for people. Yet that's something that's activating, right? Instead of making you fall asleep, but you've noticed it to be the case.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And then we had a comment in here. So Harriet was saying that the light is the problem on the Kindle. Okay. And that she creates custom cards with poetry and scriptures. How beautiful. How beautiful. All right.
I'm sorry. I like had it and then I forgot I was gonna say something that works, like for relaxation and make a suggestion, but I'm sorry. My thought just left me. So when I think of it, I'll let you know.
Okay, it'll come back. Thank you. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And then we have our meditation again. And, meditation can take a form of whatever we want. It can be our prayers. It can be reciting a mantra. I know I say the Jesus prayer often, which to me is a meditation. It can be listening to an app, as was mentioned in the beginning. So it can, meditation, people think there has to be a formal practice of meditation. It can be as simple as sitting down for 3 minutes a day, setting your phone and just breathing. That can be your meditation. And then I think today was a great day to kind of explore what time in nature look like. I think somebody had mentioned about taking a walk as part of their practice. So nature is healing for the mind and senses, spending time outside, focusing on the sights. One of the ways to ground ourselves is to work with all our senses. So sight, sound, smell, and feeling the air on our skin and being present with what that feels like and nourishing our mind. So, and as we get better into the weather here, we're going to have opportunities to have more of those practices. So here's where we talk about the minimum daily requirement. And so most of us are familiar with the minimum daily requirement when we speak about vitamins and nutrition and things like that. I'd like to frame it for our minimum daily requirement for being able to create space to nourish ourselves. So where do we normally start with this? Normally, what I recommend is to start in a general way with 1 to 3 new things at a time. Our minimum daily requirement. It may be with our honey lemon water, or maybe with our breathing practices or our self-massage. We normally would say build gradually over time as we learn about ourselves. And the recommendation is to allow at least 40 days to evaluate the effect of any new practice. One of the things that I recommend also is doing some self-reflection on this, observing ourselves. Which practices are calling to us? That's where we would probably want to start first. Which practices may not be right for us right now? Where does our resistance pop up as we work with our routine? All of these are very valuable observations and are part of the intention behind the practice. I also recommend that some things, again, to percolate on when we're thinking about our relationship with nourishment in space is additional. What's my relationship with stress? With my breath? With my body? with food, with resistance, with the allowing yourself to slow down and relax. These can be incredibly complex when we really start looking at them and saying, okay, what is my relationship with allowing myself to sit down and relax? You know, some of us have said, you know, it feels uncomfortable to do that. Where's that coming from? What does that mean? Is there a way to make some shifts in that? And again, when we do this, I want to make sure that we talk about this is not a judgment. This is an observation. I know you guys had a talk on mindfulness. So the premise of mindfulness is to be aware without judgment. So when we look at this awareness within ourselves and our observation, we're doing it without judgment. It's something that we're doing to learn about ourselves. So I've also included this, our little build our own self-care kit, which is kind of fun if this is something you'd like to do. So creating a dedicated space to be able to journal or listen to your music or maybe draw. I know some people were mentioning their creative endeavors. They may have space already set aside for that. Having a little kit maybe with your sesame oil, your rose water, your essential oils. Epsom salts is another amazing tool that can be used with bathing to help support and balance the nervous system. And then we have our honey, our lemon, and our herbal teas. And anything else you can think of in your self-care kit or your space or your nourishment kit. Now, one more activity that I'd like to introduce tonight, and this I find can be very helpful in many places. So if we're standing in line at the grocery store, if we're waiting for an appointment, whether it be maybe to get our car worked on, or where maybe we have a doctor's appointment, or maybe we're, who knows where we are. But I want to introduce this exercise. And again, it's more focused on breathing, but it's also incorporates some grounding. So we can either do this standing or we can do this seated. So most of us are seated. So if you're seated, I'd like you to put your feet on the floor if you're able to. And it's called 2 feet, 1 breath. So you're going to begin with an inhalation, but I want your inhalation to start at the base, the sole of your right foot. And you're going to inhale from the sole of your right foot, which is grounded on the floor, and inhale it all the way up your body to your crown, and then exhale. And then inhale through the left foot. All the way up your body, and then exhale. And you can repeat that as many times as you want. And what that does is that brings your awareness to your right foot on the ground, feeling the ground. Inhale up, exhale, and then inhale through the left foot, again, feeling the foot on the ground, and then exhale. And again, this can be done seated. This can be done standing. I haven't tried it driving. Don't know if that's a great idea. I haven't tried it driving, but just when we're kind of in that place of maybe feeling some stress levels go up, or we just want to practice and give ourselves that time and that nourishment.